Okay. We're going to go into the chassidut. Is this Hashem Yisbarach? Amazing. Okay. Oh, hopefully it's going to let me maneuver the page a little bit. Sorry about this. Okay. Oh. Yes, we got up to Shali Shalach, Shalach Shalach, this very important dynamic of how Shemitah leads us to Yovel. Shemitah leads us into Yovel, having a sense of self to give up to Hashem is step one. And step two, after 7 years, 7 times 7 years of doing and observing Shemitah, then there's this amazingly transcendent place where it's not even me that's giving myself up to Hashem, but Shalach, Shalach, what's Hashem's is Hashem's. Even my very efforts all belong to Hashem. And all that's left that can be called under my name is my davening, which is this wondrous place because my davening and Hashem's davening are one. And it's this very, very high thing. And as we said, we're going to see here, he's going to be talking a lot about the dynamic between Shemitah and Yovel, and particularly about not trying to skip madregas, not trying to skip levels to go straight from Shemitah to Yovel, to skip over having 7 Shemitahs and just going straight to Yovel and thinking that the person's reached already a level of this transcendence. As we're going to see, it requires the 50 years. There's a whole depth of the waiting and the processing in order to get to Yovel. And here we go. LeYisrael, Am Yisrael has a very special avoda, very precious thing called Yovel, V'hainu Yovel, Asher hu or, Asher ba'olam hazeh, ein shum tfisa v'havana. Yovel is so high that we can talk about it, but we can't grasp it or understand it in this world at all. As the Navi says, Ayin lo irasa elokim zulasecha, yaseh lemechakalo. This is a huge thing that he brings now here from the Gemara and Brachas. The Chazal speaking about different stages of Mashiach are also like this. That all of the prophecies that that are descriptive, that say nation shall not lift up sword against nation, that speak about a wondrous peace that will be in the world, that speak about the third Beis Hamikdash, that speak about awareness of God filling the world like the ocean, like the water fills the sea. None of those prophecies are actually about the final state of being called Olam Haba. Olam Haba is Ayin lo yirasa elokim zelasecha. No eye can see it except you, Hashem, alone. And it's just extremely, that's the Gemara says, all the Nevi'im, all their Nevuas, anything we can talk about, even in verses of prophecy, are only about the first stage of Mashiach, which in a certain way here can correspond to Shemitah. But the next stage of Olam Haba that corresponds to Yovel, that's Ayin lo yirasa elokim zelasecha. That's something that no eye can see. One way that's described in Chabad chassidus, if I remember correctly, it's Chabad chassidus, Ayin lo yirasa, because there will be no eye. It's interesting in English, the word I, E-Y-E, and the word I, the letter I. There will be no separateness of the I that sees something outside itself, because it will be this amazing kind of wondrous, transcendent oneness, where in a way that we are totally incapable of understanding, that we will exist and Hashem will exist and we'll all be God, and yet there will also be us, and it will be this amazing, harmonious, transcendent thing that we cannot grasp, that we have no language for at all. And that's the level called Yovel. As the Gemara says, what is one way the Gemara speaks about it? Zeh yayin hameshumar be'inavav, this thing, that which the eye cannot perceive, that which even the prophets cannot describe. There's this ultimate state of Olam Haba that relates to Yovel. Is, the Gemara says, it is the wine that is stored in its grapes since the 6 days of creation. That the whole universe, so to speak, has been just waiting for that delight, for the wine to come out. This really something else. It's a big l'chaim waiting for us, and the longer we wait, the better it is. Although we need it to come soon. That this is, he says, that it shows us that the efforts that we do, this is totally independent of us, because it's been waiting for us since before there was even a creation. It's been waiting in the grapes since before humanity was even created. So it's something totally beyond anything related to our efforts. But still, and this is going to be the whole big theme moving ahead, it requires our efforts in order for us to get there. So once again, we have 3 distinct periods. There's the 6 years, which we spoke about, where we're davening and planting, and we're involved with the earth. And that's the simple level of human efforts, agriculturally and davening. Then there's the next level called shemittah, where we hold back from our efforts in tending the earth, and we give the earth its respite to receive directly from Hashem. And like he said yesterday, that if you would work the earth on the shemittah year, you would be bothering it from receiving its light and energy from God directly. So not working the earth on shemittah year is not bothering it while the earth is receiving its energy directly from God. So level 1 of human effort is the general simple thing of working and davening for the 6 years. Level 2 of human effort is the shemittah, where there's the effort of giving up, the effort of letting go, the effort that's called sheli shalach. I do have a sense that it's my field, but I'm giving it up to Hashem. And that's called like a spiritual effort of letting go, of making the Shabbos of the land, sheli shalach. And then there's Yovel that's called shalach shalach. What's yours is yours. Means there's no effort at all on my part. It's this totally transcendent place. Everything is all yours, Hashem. But what's so important to know is that we need the first 2 stages, which include 7 times counting the 7 years, 49 years. We need a long process before we can get to the Yovel. There's going to be a tendency and a desire to skip straight to the Yovel and say, oh, it's all Hashem straight. I already know that. It's all just Hashem. No, there's something important about our efforts, not because our efforts create that final state, but that in order for us to be able to perceive it and connect to it truly and honestly, we have to have gone through a whole yovel, a whole 50-year thing of different types of avoda, including the avoda of letting go. One way that this is described in the Masechet Megillah Daf Tet, and this is something the Bavitcher Rebbe was very big on, was Yagati Umatzati. The Gemara says, if a person says, I've put effort into my Torah study and I haven't found any connection in learning, then don't believe them. They didn't really try. And if someone says, Lo Yagati Umatzati, I didn't put any effort in, and yet I found such a connection to Torah, also don't believe them. But if someone says, Yagati Umatzati, Ta'amin. If someone says, I've put effort in and I've found something in this, then trust them. And the Rav Rebbe is pointing out, it doesn't say Yagati vehisagti. I worked really hard and I achieved. It says, I worked hard and I found. And it's an amazing thing because finding is something that is serendipitous. Finding is something that's not related exactly to effort. And yet you have to have the effort first in order for the finding to touch your heart. Not because you're creating the thing you're finding. The thing you're finding belongs to Hashem, it's mamish gold, but you become somebody different by doing the effort before. Right? And that's similar to this idea here. The whole process of the 6 years, and then the process of letting go on Shemitah, and then doing that again 7 times. And then mamish, that is what makes us able to find the great transcendence of the Yovel, of the Ein Lo Ra'asa Elokim Zasecha, of that wondrous unity. So he's just emphasizing this with the Gemara's mashal of wine within the grapes from before creation, from the 6 days of creation, means that this was there from before humanity was even created. So you can't say that great reward, that great connection is because of our efforts. It was there and it's been waiting for us since before we were even born. It's already done. But our efforts are important in order for us to be able to be present enough to receive it, as we're going to see. So he says, Hashem says, I will take you to your land, koimemius, right? That's from the Harachaman, bring us back to our land in an upstanding way. He says, koimemius also means shnei komos, 2 floors. Koimemius literally means standing, but it also has like a plural of the word koma, which means a floor. It means there's 2 floors. Koma rishona hu makom sheyuchal lahagia avodas ha'adam. The first floor represents the things that I can reach according to my efforts. The koma shniya, but the second floor, hu makom asher shama lo yuchal lahagia klal avodas ha'adam. That's a place that our effort has nothing to do with. It's totally transcendent. V'zehu Yovel, that's what Yovel is about. Yovel is that second floor. It's there anyway. And it's so high and so amazing, it wouldn't make sense for any of our efforts to be able to achieve it. Zehu Yovel. Ve'ach shebedivrei Torah ksiv, v'Torah's chesed al lashona. Even though all of Torah is really a chesed, is really just a gift from Hashem. All of Torah is a gift. Shehu nosnas etzel ha'adam b'toch avoda. So the Torah itself gives us this advice. The Torah itself is one great, it's coming from that place of Yovel. After all, Matan Torah was on the 50th day, which is after 49 days of counting, also corresponding to this. The whole Torah is really this great love that's coming from that place that's called Yovel, that's above all effort. And the Torah itself tells you, in order to really connect, you've got to first do this. You've got to count 7 shmitas. Here's where he first introduces this idea. If it were not for shmita, if it was not for our ability to give back, to give up, to hold back, and again, today it's harder to relate to, with the world economy and with the high tech and everything, but agriculture was, and if we really had our priorities straight, maybe it still would be the focus of the economy. Like, this is it. We're working the land. We're getting. What else is there to do, really? we're getting our mazon from Hashem. We're davening it up. We're mamish. The whole Shemon Esrei. So much of the Shemon Esrei is based around what time of year we're in and when we're supposed to daven for rain and the dew and so on. So it used to be, and today it still is for many farmers, a humongous challenge to let go of the core of our economy and not use our fruits and vegetables and our grains as a money-making thing, but rather to simply relate to it only as just receiving food from Hashem. This is an incredible corrective, like we've spoken about, it's an incredible heavenly corrective energy to kind of capitalistic society. In Torah, you have a capitalistic society, but every 6 years, there's this heavenly breath of new air that comes down. All the loans are canceled. That's humongous, and the land cannot be used as an object for money anymore, which is humongous. This is an incredible corrective energy from Hashem. We're mamish saying we're holding now, Baruch Hashem, Erev Shabbos. This whole Elul is one big Erev Shabbos, and so this. Without shemittah, that act of letting go, which is hard and it's an effort, and doing that, we need to do that 7 times in order to get to Yovel. We can't jump such a big distance straight to the Yovel. Right? The level of ani that is in bina, that we first need 7 times Hashem saying ha'aretz asher ani noten lachem. We relate to the name ani through the aretz 7 times before we can get to ani bina, which is this gewalt of the yovel. Shirak Hashem Yisbarach bal nitzvech lahadraga. Only Hashem is beyond and does not need to go step by step, but we have to go step by step. Avaloha Adam, we need to go step by step. Korchach muchrach lelech derech shemittah. We are forced, we must. There's no other way. We have to go through the process of shemittah 7 years again and again. Hainu habirur sheva pamim sheva, v'hu chamishim shana. 7 times 7. Only then can we get to the 50th year. Gewalt. We'll continue on this, and now we will move into the halachas. So we started yesterday with flowers in our discussion of just which things are considered to have kedushas shvis. Which things? Which produce? We saw that amazing opinion of Rav Yeshiv. I'm still like in awe of that opinion. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to be machmir like him. Rav Yeshiv Mamish jumped out of the Gemara into today's generation, and he said that since today people grow flowers en masse for the sake of decoration, and there's a whole business in it. He says, therefore, it does have the holiness of shvis just because of how it looks. In the Gemara, there was no question about this. There's only food, human food, animal food, dyes, soaps, also things that are used for their detergent quality, and fragrances as a machlokes, and we're machmir. But the Gemara does not speak at all about flowers that are just for decorative purposes. The Rav Yashiv said, Mamish, it's an unbelievable thing. He said, since in our generation, where there's such a big business with flowers and we grow them for decorative purposes, we have to treat the flowers with kedushas shvis. Mamish Rav Yashiv held like that. It's a big chiddush. It's an enormous chiddush. Everybody else says only those flowers that are grown for smell, like we said yesterday, the list of them, roses and so on. Only those flowers that and even the ones that have a smell but that are mainly just for the sake of decoration, those there are many who are lenient and say it doesn't have kedusha shvis because it's not really for the sake of smell. It's really, very few people buy flowers just for their smell, and very few people grow flowers just for their smell. Roses and that list that we had yesterday, there's certain flowers that are eaten. They said they can be put into salads and so on. What's that?
I was going to say that, in fact, now after flowers are grown without a fragrance.
Wow.
Because people are allergic to the fragrance.
Judy's just explaining that nowadays they dafka engineer the flowers to have no fragrance because people can sneeze or get allergic to them, and they have a whole way of, so the dafka take out the fragrance. So Rav Yashiv's chiddush is massive. I never heard it before. Okay, there is such an opinion. So if that would be true, then it would mean you have to be careful who you buy flowers from and buy Otzer Beis Din flowers. And I don't know if that is actually done today. Try and find out if that actually is done even. And you'd have to dispose of them in your shemittah, special shemittah waste basket, and so on. But again, Reb Shlomo Carlebach and virtually every other posek does not hold like that. This whole sefer from Rav Efrati, who is a Talmud of Rav Yashiv, that's why I'm also not understanding why it doesn't appear in this sefer, doesn't bring it in this other sefer. So I have to look into it. Okay, any case. What about wood? And unfortunately, Aryeh is not here. He's the one who asked the wood question. I found an answer in here from Chazon Ish about wood. Wood that is for the sake of firewood or building or to make furniture does not have Kedushat Shvit. Why not? Whereas things that are grown, herbs that are grown for the sake of laundering. I don't know how much that is actually still true today, but in the days of the Gemara, they used to use certain herbs for their detergent quality. And the Gemara Mamish learns out a Ferish in Masechah Shviz. It's not in the Mishnayos, but the Gemara in Shviz brings this out, that it does have Kedusha Shviz because it follows once again the paradigm that the destruction and the benefit happen at the same time, right? The definition, the categorical definition of eating is that the food gets broken down and destroyed at the same moment that you're enjoying it. So anything that is hana'asa ubiyuro ke'echad has kedusha shviz. So the question, so things that are detergent, they get broken down and worn down as you're lathering or as you're cleaning the thing, and so therefore the benefit of it cleaning and its destruction are happening at the same time, and so therefore those herbs that are grown to be detergents have kedusha shviz. I don't know how much that applies today, because today you buy soap, you buy things mostly in in different. You don't buy herbs for that. Maybe some people do. I don't know. So the Chazon Ish now brings a distinction. What's the difference between that and wood that is burned for heat? Oh, one more detail also: oils. And this we saw in the Mishnah. Oils that are used for light do have kedusha shviz, even if it's not an oil for eating, but it's an oil that's used for light, does have the holiness of shviz, because while it's burning, it's producing light at the same second, and therefore it does have the holiness of shviz. So what's the difference between detergents or oil burning for light and wood that's burning for the sake of the warmth? So the Chazon Ish says, we'll read his words, and hopefully you'll agree with him. But I could see you questioning it. But here's the Chazon Ish says like this: Yesh hevdel ben hana me'etzim. There's a difference between the pleasure that you get from wood, sheneni mehachom, that you get pleasure from the heat of the wood, shenotzar misreifas ha'etzim, while heating, because of the burning. At the moment that you're getting the benefit of the fire, the wood is already gone. So what the flame that reaches you and warms you, whatever that flame once was wood, but that wood has now become like charcoal and it's gone. So it's considered to be a step removed. It's not the same as food, where the food is literally in your mouth, and as it's being broken down, you're enjoying it. When wood burns, the warmth that reaches you is considered to be already after the wood has been destroyed, as opposed to the light. The light that reaches you is considered to happen at the same time as the wood is being destroyed. So the distinction between light and heat when wood burns is kanireh, the light is instantaneous, and the heat is considered a byproduct, that the heat is reaching you from something that has already been destroyed, whereas the white light is reaching you as it's being destroyed.
You can't separate the light from the heat.
So that's it. So I was waiting for somebody to ask that. Judy's saying, how can you separate the light and the heat? They're both. So I don't know. And we do know that light travels faster than anything else. And so maybe it has linked to the speed of light. Our mamish have no idea. But this is Chazon Ish how he explains it. He says, as opposed to oil that produces light, wood that produces heat are only a first step for the heat that comes later. It's after they're gone that you get the heat. That's what he says. That's not considered like eating. Therefore, firewood does not have the holiness of shvis, as opposed to detergents, herbs that are used for cleaning. While you're cleaning, they're getting broken down, and it's mamish happening at the same time. Okay, these are like kind of like hairline distinctions and understanding the mechanics of why, but this is a halacha that's accepted throughout, that firewood does not have the holiness of shvis, but oil that is used for lighting does, and herbs that are used for laundering also do. Take it to the moon. Okay. Now, another interesting question that comes up is tobacco. What about tobacco? If tobacco is grown in Eretz Yisrael, I know how much it's grown in Eretz Yisrael, although it is actually more a question, not to be too far out over here, but with cannabis, it is grown in Eretz Yisrael. And there's a very interesting shir that's out from Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, the son-in-law of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, about cannabis. And I'm pretty sure he comes out l'chumra, that you should treat it as having Kedusha Shvis. And it's very similar to the discussion here about tobacco. What's the idea? Is the issue is that, yes, as it's burning and you're smoking it, as it's being destroyed, you're taking in at the same second the thing. It's similar to eating. The question is it shave l'chol nefesh? This the Gemara in Masechet Shvi speaks out. In order for it to be considered to be a benefit or a delight, a hana'ah, that is considered to be related to the holiness of Shvis, it has to be shaveh l'chol nefesh. It means it has to be something that everyone would enjoy. Is that true? Not everybody enjoys cigarettes. Judy's pointing down. Okay, well maybe Raya says, after all, right? The Gemara actually speaks this out about mugmar. They used to burn incense, and not everybody. That's the big argument about fragrances, is that the Gemara says maybe not everyone enjoys it, maybe not everybody would want it. So what about tobacco? So first of all, there's been an evolution within Jewish history in the understanding of tobacco. The Pnei Yehoshua, one of the great Talmudists of about 400 years ago, he says that something that helps your health is definitely considered shaveh l'chol nefesh. It's definitely considered a benefit for everyone if it benefits your health. And so he says smoking is good for your health. Why? It helps you digest and it creates an appetite. He says Kayom, the right of the Sefer of Efrati brings that, but that's how they thought of it back then. That it's good for you to smoke. It's going to help you to digestion and help whet your appetite. Kayom for Alomikrim, today nobody considers any benefits of smoking to outweigh the negatives of smoking. Definitely the negatives are worse than any benefits. So in this case, it would seem to be that it is a problem and is not considered shaveh l'chol nefesh. And since it's not shaveh l'chol nefesh, then it wouldn't have the holiness of shvis. It's not something that everyone enjoys, so it wouldn't have the holiness of shvis. So so therefore, it kind of depends on this. Do you consider cigarettes to be something everyone would enjoy or not? And this also, by the way, just has another halachic implication. On Yom Tov, can you smoke a cigarette on Yom Tov? On Yom Tov, you're allowed to light a flame from an existing flame. Could a person smoke a cigarette on Yom Tov? So that also depends. You're only allowed to burn things on Yom Tov when it's for the sake of something that everyone would enjoy. Exact same halachic principle, shaveh l'chol nefesh. Many people do smoke cigarettes on Yom Tov, relying on the idea that, even if it's bad for you, but people would enjoy it. And therefore, those people certainly should be machmir on any tobacco grown in Eretz Yisrael on Shemitah year to treat it with the holiness of Shvis, because they definitely, by smoking it on Yantif, are considering it to be something that everyone would enjoy. If it's something everyone would enjoy, then it qualifies for the Kedusha of Shvis. The difference also in terms of cannabis is that it can be eaten, and it often is eaten. The oil can be extracted and put into foods. The leaves can be ground up and made into, and therefore that makes it even more than tobacco a problem, or not a problem, makes it holy. It means that if it grows in Eretz Yisrael, it should be treated with the holiness of Shemitah. Excuse me. Grape leaves. So grape leaves can be eaten, and if they were harvested for the sake of eating, then they also have the holiness of Shemitah, because even though they're secondary to the grapes, but they wrap their rice in grape leaves. It's a food, and therefore they have Kedusha Shvis. The fibers of cotton or of flax, of linen, even though they can be used to make clothing, but that's not what Kedusha Shvis is about. Kedusha Shvis is not related to clothing, and therefore they don't have Kedusha Shvis. However, the seeds, flax seeds, are eaten, and cotton seeds are actually animal foods. And Shemitah, the Kedusha of Shemitah does apply to animal foods equally as to human food. So cotton seeds do have the holiness of Shvis. Herbs that are used for the sake of refuah, simche marpe shemishtamshim ripui machalot, that are used for health, are not holy with the holiness of Shvis, because they're not really a food. And this is speaking only about those herbs that are strictly medicinal. Nothing to do, nobody would eat them or put them in their salad or make a tea from them just tam. They're herbs that are strictly medicinal, and they're totally bitter. They don't give any pleasure at all. They're thereby not considered to be a food at all. And they're just a medicine only, strictly a medicine. Things that are just medicines and not foods don't have the holiness of Shemitah. Okay. But herbs that healthy people use to improve themselves, the herbs that help your immune system, and then you make teas with, and even though they have all kinds of medicinal purposes also, but since they're also things that people use to feel better and things that people enjoy, they do have the holiness of Shvis. Mushrooms do not have the holiness of Shvis because they are not from the Aretz. That's why, for the same reason that they're brachas shakol ni'avid varo, because mushrooms get their energy, their life energy from the humidity of the air directly, and not from the earth. They don't make roots, and therefore don't have holiness of Shvis. Hadassim, this is going to be an issue for our sukkahs. Hadassim, there's a machlokes, yeshomrim she'ein b'hem kedusha Shvis. There are those who hold that it does not have the holiness of Shvis, because even though we do say that mine besamim, that things that are grown for the sake of their smell, we do consider them to have the holiness of Shvis, but Hadassim still, today, the reason why people plant them, they grow all over the wild too, but why do people plant them and tend to them and take care of them? Is not because of their smell. They're doing it for their use as a mitzvah. Veshimush mitzvah eno bichlal ochla, and that use of mitzvah is not the category anymore of eating, and it makes it clear that its purpose is not for smell, even though it does also have a smell, and therefore the minhag is not to treat. You do not have to treat your hadassim with kedusha shvis. You can, although the truth is, in terms of disposing of the hadassim that you use with your lulav, the minhag anyway is not to dispose of it in a disrespectful manner, because it was used as your daled meaning. So you go to a nice shady spot in the forest and lay it down to rest, or some people save it to burn their chametz with, or to put in the oven that cooks the matzahs. So Okay, so Hadassim, he says, there is a machlokas about it, but in the end of the day, the minhag is not to treat them with Kedusha Shvis. Lulav, also, the minhag is not to treat it as having the holiness of Shvis. Aravas, there's no question, the willow branches, they have no taste and no smell and no nothing, and therefore are not treated with Kedusha Shvis. Etrogim, we're probably going to have a whole shiur about to understand more in depth how it works with etrogs. Peros, boser, fruits that are not yet ripe. What happens? Does the Kedusha only come once it ripens? The Kedusha comes even before it's ripe. Yesh behem Kedusha shvis me'ashlav shacharei nefilas haperach shenikar apri. As soon as the blossom falls off and there's a recognizable fruit there, from that moment it has the holiness of shvis. Kodam lachem, but before that it doesn't have the holiness of shvis. What about mixtures? If I have something that is holy with the holiness of Shvis and it gets mixed into something else, such as I have a cake and it calls for wine and its ingredients, and I put wine in that is holy with Kedusha Shvis, or orange juice of Shvis that's mixed in with another drink, and so on, in such a way that its taste is still recognizable. As long as you don't have 60 against it, so long it's the same idea of bittul b'shishim. If it's more than a 60th, meaning to say a 59th or 58th, it's larger than a 60th, so its taste is recognizable, then it does have the holiness of shmita, and you have to be careful how you dispose of any leftover cake and so on. But if it has no taste anymore, and then it is bata. And what happens if you mixed wine from Shemitah with other wine? Now, how am I going to be able to determine if it's batal b'shishim or not? So there are those who say that you should be machmir in such a case and treat the whole thing with kedusha shvis, and be careful how you dispose of it. Okay, good. Tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, we will talk about pits and rinds, and how does it work? Lamaisa, I have an orange and it's kadosh. So what do I do with the parts that most people don't eat? How do I dispose of them? Mitzvah Shem, we'll get that tomorrow. Thank you so much for saving my life. Hashem. Ashreinu matov chalkeinu.